Mr. Bennett from TSBA makes his recommendation. So I think the order of business will be to hear from him. He'll explain what he's done and who he's recommending and answer any questions. Then we'll decide whether to approve that list or to modify that list. And after we have that done, we'll move into discussion of the questions that we'll be asking, because as you recall, we agreed that we'd be providing all the candidates those questions. So that's the agenda, and then any other issues or questions that you have along the way. Aaron, you have a look.
Well, pardon. I had the thought as I was thinking about and preparing for this, we have both internal and external candidates. And as I looked at the existing contract and also the questions, I found myself leaning in directions in considering those 17 candidates and kind of in context of who those 5 might be. I was wondering, would it be appropriate, would it be correct for us to potentially, and I don't want to keep Randy here longer than he has to and anything, but would it be more even-handed to talk about and consider the questions of the contract and the questions of the interview questions prior to deciding who those 5 are? We don't then have those 5 in mind as we consider those 2 issues.
I'm not sure that you're going to talk about the contract.
There were 3 things that we were going to discuss tonight: the 5 finalists, the starting point for the contract, and the questions that would be asked in the interview. And we had hopes that we would decide all 3 of those, and I suggested that that might be a long meeting. But if we consider those 3 things, would it be appropriate for us to consider the questions and the contract in a more neutral state of mind before establishing 5 finalists?
I just hesitate to keep Mr. Bennett here for that, what could be a lengthy discussion. You're thinking that somehow we might be influenced by the pool that we pick?
As I thought about it, I thought, specifically with regards to the contract, things that are typical and standard within our system may or may not be of significance to someone who could be a candidate from outside of our system.
I think we're going to have that discussion without regard to who's in the pool. I mean,
okay.
Well,
they're either going to accept.
It's really not that complicated,
no,
as it is. So yeah, I don't see it being an issue either.
Other thoughts? I'm not seeing other thoughts.
Okay.
So I'm going to take that you all are okay with having Mr. Bennett go ahead and present?
I am.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you for your work in this endeavor.
Glad to do that, and it's good to be here with you tonight. As you know, you all have talked a bit about this whole process and making some modifications and approaching it in a way that we don't always do. And of course, we're willing to work with the board in any manner that they choose. And I knew that you wanted more input into the process because you've been getting the resumes on a regular basis and you've had a chance to read those and study those. And so, Mr. Holliday, you've referred to the 5, but tonight we're just going to recommend 4 to you and leave you some flexibility. Not because there's not necessarily 5 good candidates, but because there were 4 that we thought are comfortable with recommending. There's actually more than 4 that we're comfortable recommending, but we think that might be well suited to this position. And then once you have those recommendations, I think you've got the flexibility if you want to round it out to 5 or perhaps even 6. It's up to you as a board to do that. And so I want to approach it from that standpoint tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the vetting process that happened last week, that we had 6 folks sitting together talking about these, going over this. We did a lot of calling ahead of time, a lot of questioning, and we're comfortable with the people that we are recommending. We think that any of them have have the ability to do a good job in the position. One thing that I won't do, and I want to just go ahead and tell you that now, is actually talk about who was involved in that process or exactly what was said in that process and how we might have arrived at decisions, because that puts us in a precarious situation. And I think I mentioned that to you all at one of our previous meetings. Did I not? Did I not say that? I thought I did at a previous meeting. We want to make sure that we can continue to get educational professionals to help us out in this process and give us recommendations. And so, number one, we don't identify the folks. Other than myself and Dr. Grissom, we're involved in every one because, well, you knew that because we're there anyway. But the folks that do get involved in the process, I think would be hesitant to do that if their names were out there and people started calling them from all over the state. So that's the reason the vetting process and how we come to recommend those folks to you. We won't really talk about the process itself. But that being said, we have the old interview guide. You haven't made any changes to that yet.
Right.
Okay, I have a copy of that included in the notebook. So let me just take a couple of minutes and pass these notebooks out to you, and then I'll talk you through them and answer any questions about that. And once I've done that, I will leave you alone to your deliberations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to start with the
Thank
chair,
you.
and I'm going to work my way up this way. And I'll try to get them out fast, so nobody will have them much longer than the other. Open it, you want me to open it? Now, as you open up the notebook, as I said, the sample interview guide is in the left-hand pocket there. And what you're seeing prior to the first tab, for the most part, is the interim report, which you received the last time that I came. I'd like to ask you, if you would, to just go ahead to one page before the first tab, and you'll see the list here, and I'd like to talk about each one of these first. Now, there's some other things that I want to talk about the interview process, things like that. But we learned a long time ago that as soon as the notebooks are passed out, everybody goes to the candidates and starts looking at them, and nobody pays any attention at all to what I'm saying unless I'm talking about the candidates. So I'd like to talk about the candidates first and then go back. Now, these candidates are listed in alphabetical order. We normally list them by date of interview, but I know you wanted flexibility with the interview, so we did not nail down any particular candidate as to date. So let me go ahead and start with candidate number 1, who is Ms. Paula Barnes. Now, I don't have to tell you all a whole lot about Ms. Barnes, but as you know, she has been involved here in Rutherford County for a long time. She's the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Student Services. She's had, gosh, what, 8 or 9 years in that position, I think? A long time. If you can do that position for any length of time, my hat's off to you. She's also had experience on the other levels of school here. She's been involved in middle schools and elementary schools. She's been a lifelong educator. She actually taught in New Orleans. I don't know if any of you all knew that or not. If you look on to page 3 of her resume, you will see that she's got a Bachelor of Science Elementary Education from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She's got a master's from MTSU and also an education specialist in EDS from MTSU. She comes highly recommended, and we certainly think that she is someone that you should interview for this position because as an assistant superintendent, she's had a chance to be looking at this system from a system-wide perspective, and we think with a system this size, that's an important thing to consider. So our first candidate we recommend is Ms. Paula Barnes. Our second candidate is Dr. Stan Curtis. If you'll move over to his resume after his cover letter there, you will see that Stan is currently working in the Cheatham County Schools as Director of Transportation, Maintenance, and Custodial Services. Prior to that, he worked for the Tennessee Department of Education, and it's significant that the superintendent of Cheatham County was the Commissioner of Education at that time, so he has hired him both for the Department of Education job and the job in Cheatham County now. He speaks very highly of him, recommends him very highly. He was in Marshall County from 2008 to 2010 before going to the State Department of Education. and then was involved as a principal in Murray County prior to that, and also in the Lawrence County Board of Education. He received a Bachelor's of Elementary Education from Middle Tennessee State, Administration and Supervision, Master's of Education, also from MTSU. He got the EDS and the EDD degree from Tennessee State University, and his references, of course, are on the next page, and he also comes highly recommended. Our third candidate is Mr. Don Odom. We certainly feel comfortable recommending Mr. Odom. As you can see, he's got a number of years in Rutherford County. All of those years in Rutherford County? I think all 43 years in Rutherford County. So that says a lot. He's received a specialist in education degree from MTSU in 1975. Prior to that, he got the master's in teaching at MTSU in 72, bachelor's in 68, and graduated from Lascassas High School prior to that. He is the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction here in Rutherford County and has been in that position for almost 10 years. He's been the attendance coordinator prior to that, principal in elementary schools, and also involved as a teacher at Oakland High School and Kittrell School prior to that. He comes highly recommended by the folks that we talked to, and we feel good about recommending him as one of the 4 finalists. Our 4th finalist is Dr. Donna Wright. Ms. Wright is currently the Assistant Superintendent for the Knox County School District. She has also had an opportunity to see district administration of a large school district from the perspective of central office there. She has been Assistant Superintendent there from 2004 to the present, which is a decent tenure, I believe. She was Director of High Schools prior to that from 98 to 2004, and she was Principal and an Assistant Principal at West High School from 1990 to 98, and she was a classroom teacher to 82 to 90. So as you can see, all the experience she's had, she's served adequate time in that to really get the full flavor of the job. She's also an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee, LMU. She teaches graduate classes, instructional leadership, and principal preparation in school finance. You can see some of the additional things that she's done in her resume there. She got all 3 of her degrees from the University of Tennessee. She does have a Doctor of Education, which she received in 2002, a Master's in 1990, and a Bachelor of Science in 1982. And she does come highly recommended as well. And those are the 4 folks that we recommend you interview. Now, I say we recommend, again, we understand that that process is up to you as a Board of Education, and you may take a look at these and make a determination that you want to modify those. That's quite all right, because this is your process. But we think that within the 4 that we've recommended, there's certainly 1 or more excellent candidates to be the next leader of Rutherford County Schools. So let me stop and see if you have any questions at this point.
Questions? Don't see any.
All right. Now let's go back to the first part of the book that you've had a chance to do that, and maybe you will follow along with me on that. I don't know. The first part of this is the interim report that we've already given to you. We want to put it in the final report so you'll have everything in one notebook. But if you'll turn to page 19, talks a little bit about the interview process, and there are a few things that I want to cover. Now, obviously, one of the key things that Joyce and Dr. Burns will be doing the next few days is contacting all of these folks and arranging for when they're going to have the interviews and making sure that all the logistics are taken care of, and I think that's very important. But there are some things that we recommend that you do, and if you look over on page 20, I think it's so important when you've got a new candidate come in to set the scene. Now, I want you to take the approach that your 2 local candidates over here are coming from outside and they don't know that much about you. You need to sell them on Rutherford County Schools, why you think they'd be why you think it's a good fit for them. It's going to be important for you to treat them as much like outside candidates as possible to get an apples to apples comparison. So don't just shrug it off and think, well, they're local people, we know all there is to know about it. I will guarantee you when you sit down and talk to these folks, you'll learn things about them that you didn't know. And I think those are very telling things. So be objective as you approach in this. And I've got a list of 4 on that page. Everybody's going to be asked the same question. And I think that's important that you happen. Make sure that the questions are job-related and are really more than just yes and no questions. Well, do you like so-and-so? Yes. I mean, if that's going to, you ask questions like that, your interview's going to be over very quickly and you're not going to know anything. Tell us how you've increased parental involvement. Tell us different things like that. And you know, open-ended questions to give them an opportunity to explain what they've done, what they're proud of, and how they think they could make this particular job work for them and Rutherford County Schools. Ask follow-up questions. Now, we don't give you follow-up questions because that's going to depend on what kind of answers you get to the main questions that we ask for. And your follow-up questions may change from candidate to candidate depending on the answers you get to the questions. Nothing wrong with that. And you can't be prepared for every follow-up question. We're not expecting you to have a list of all those, but I think you let the answers to the questions that you've decided on dictate how you follow up. And I think any board member that has a follow-up question and they want some additional information, I should think at the appropriate time could be recognized by the chair and ask that question. Take plenty of notes. It's going to be very important that you do that because in this process, you will get these answers mixed up with 4 people. You're going to be spending a lot of time talking and interviewing. If you're not taking good notes, you may attribute what one person said to someone else, but to keep that the way you need it to be, take notes on each candidate. And we recommend once you get to the final copy of this, that everybody have 4 copies of this, one for each candidate, so you can make notes as you go along. Write the candidate's name on the front and make sure that you write the notes as you go along, and it will help you keep your thoughts straight when you go look at that. We also recommend, and I've told you this before, that you share those with all of your candidates. And I think it's particularly appropriate for the out-of-town candidates, the folks from Cheatham County and Knoxville, because your local candidates do have an opportunity to be here and see and hear the interviews, different things like that. And I think it's important to get them in the hands of everybody, local candidates and out-of-town candidates, so that everybody has a chance to see the initial questions and feel comfortable with that. And then the follow-up questions may take you places with each one that you didn't necessarily know you were going to go. Question, Mr. Holliday? Okay. You look like you had one. I was going to stop for a second and give you a chance. Make sure it's a comfortable setting. Now, it's my understanding that you plan to have dinner and then interview. Is that correct? And I think that's good because it's great to sit down and break bread together and get to know somebody over a table like that and then move into the interview session. I think it will basically give you not a stress-free environment, but a reduced stress environment. Obviously, it's going to be stressful for the candidate coming in to be considered for the job, but I think if you can ease that stress by sitting down and having a meal together like that, it'll work very well. Set the stage. If there's something that you think is significant, then I think you need to probe that area. That's what follow-up questions are for. And if you're not happy with the answer, ask another question. I think that's appropriate too. Maintain control of the interview. All of these people have one thing in common. They've been involved as administrators. They've been involved where they've been in charge. And if you have a leadership vacuum in that interview, they will fill it for you. They will take over the interview. And I don't blame them, they should. Somebody's got to lead that interview. Now, Dr. Burns, I know, is very strong, chairman like that. I don't see that as a problem, but I want to make sure you understand that somebody will lead that interview, and if it's not you, it'll be your candidate. So keep that in mind. Direct the interview yourselves. I'm skipping on over here. Some listening responses information on 22. Do listen very carefully and watch the person as they talk. I think that's very important. Avoid quick first impressions, and that's not a problem with your 2 local candidates. You've been way past first impressions with those for a long time, so you know them fairly well. But don't, for people that you don't know, don't let the first impression rule what you think. Listen to them carefully, get to know them, get them through the interview process, and then make a determination as to how you think they might fit here. And going on, some interview questions, as I said before, open questions on page 23. And number 2 on page 23 is key too. You all should talk no more than 15 to 20% of the time and get the candidates to talk the rest of the time. That's what's important. You need to hear from them. And it also talks about leading questions there. Be careful about that. You can lead them to an answer, but you don't want to do that. Give them an open-ended question and let them respond the way they want to. And don't ask dumb questions. we throw that in there. I mean, you know, if you ask something's on their resume, very likely they may say to you, well, as I said on my resume or on my application or in my letter of approval, you know, do your homework. And I know you've had plenty of time to read all this information, but I recommend for the candidates you interview, you sit down and go over that again carefully before they come in. Now, on page 24, I've provided some guidance from the Equal Opportunity Employment, from Equal Opportunity Employment in regarding questions that you may and may not ask in the interview. I will refer you to your counsel about that if you've got any questions about what you can and cannot ask. This guideline comes from EEOC from their website, but I would refer you to Mr. Reed if you've got any specific questions about what you may and may not ask legally, because we don't want to find ourselves in a pickle because of that. So there's several pages of those that I want you to look at. What we've included on the next page is a sample schedule for a candidate visit. I know you all are doing this from the standpoint of interviews and dinners, so you don't need to do that. This is just some things that we do recommend if you want to make a full day of it and have them all over the county. So we'll pass on to that. As far as community visitation, if there's some places that you want to visit after that, say if you wanted to go to Cheatham County or Marshall County or Knox County to talk to any of those candidates, there's some guides here about how you might want to go about doing it, how to make that most effective as you go along. And I'll just leave those for you to look at your leisure. And the very last page we have in this section is a candidate reaction form. Once you've gone through, you've asked all the questions, you've taken all your notes, maybe it would help you to crystallize by answering these 3 questions just what you're thinking about that candidate. Just another way to keep you focused and keep you able to take a look at the information you've got and remember who you need to attribute to what, to whom. So it's a nice little form, kind of a summary form to wrap that up. And that being said, I'll stop and see if there are any questions now because I'm about finished.
This is a very helpful package here, Randy. We appreciate it. Any questions for Randy?
I provided a redacted copy for the one media representative. Is there any more media here besides you? Okay, I have a couple more press copies, and here's a couple more copies of the bulletin the board has.
Okay.
And as I said, I'll be glad to answer any additional questions if you have.
I guess just a comment, Mr. Chairman, is that, you know, as far as the questions that we've been provided there, I think they're generic enough that it's fair across the board to internal or external candidates where it may become problematic, you know, based on the information we have, you know, maybe asked a caveat question that could cause some concern for a candidate, but an applicant, but for the most part, these are.
Yeah, over the years, as we've had the criteria from community meetings and different things like that, we have developed these questions, and they've been developed, some of them as long as 15 and 20 years ago. Some were developed last year based on the criteria we got and what we hear. So what we try to do is develop questions that will give you the opportunity to give an open-ended question and hear a good lengthy answer from that. And then we've got several questions for each criteria. And I want to hasten to say that there's nothing that says you've got to use all of those. We just wanted to give you options. So we picked out 3 for a number of the criteria and 2 for most of the rest of the criteria. It may be that those questions are going to keep you in an interview longer than you want. How much overall time do you plan for the interview?
You know, we hadn't really talked about that. I mean, we're figuring an hour for dinner, and then we haven't talked about, I mean.
Well, I think you need to take a look at these questions that we're providing. These are just samples and suggestions at paring those down.
What would you say, how long would it take us to get through all the questions?
All of those questions, I think you'd be looking at possibly 3 hours.
Really?
If you have if you have a good discussion, I think it could lead you there. So I would think that, particularly if you've got your own specific questions you want to replace some of these with, I think you need to go with deciding on the questions that you want and then look at the questions that we provided and decide which one of those you want to use and go from there. I would think there may be some criteria that you might only want to ask 1 question, but I think generally 2 questions would do it. But there may be some that you'd like to ask 3 on. So don't feel that what we've given you is a Bible. It's nothing more than a guide.
Right. Great. Anything else for Randy before we move on? Aaron?
I can't imagine that there is any possibility that you can give us insight into your evaluation of candidates beyond the 4 that you've recommended?
No,
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's fine. That's what I expected.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I
Thank you
think we
very
made a
much.
good choice a few months back when we hired TSBA, so we appreciate all the good work, Randy, and
Call us if you need us, and
we
I
sure
know
will.
you've decided for us to help you with your performance evaluation. when
Right.
you get to that point.
Yeah.
So, once you've made your selection, we'd be more than happy to sit down with that person and start that process
Okay.
as well, too.
great,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, so our first task is to decide on our pool of candidates. We can take the 4 that TSBA recommends, we can delete some from that list, we can add some to that list.
Unless
What's your
somebody has
pleasure?
someone they want to add, I'll make a motion that we approve what's been brought to us by TSBA.
Okay? Discussion.
I think there were some particularly impressive candidates that are beyond the scope of these 4. And I don't believe I'm so overwhelmed that I would want to add them to these 4, but as a word of compliment to all those who applied, there were outstanding credentials, beyond these 4 that have rose to the top.
There were. Thank you for that, Aaron. Other discussion? You ready to vote? So the motion is to adopt these 4 as our group of finalists. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. So these are the 4 folks that we will interview. I'll ask Joyce tomorrow to start scheduling those, preferably on that Monday through Thursday. Joyce, is it the 9th? Is that the Monday? I think so. So clear your calendars, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. We'll have, the dinner will be at 5, is that right, Joyce? I think that's what we said. Dinner at 5, interview in the boardroom starting at 6. And then we'll go for however long it takes us to get through our questions. Questions on the process. So the 9th to the 12th, block out your evenings. And then Joyce will just work with people to schedule them as you can. Okay, so the next item of business is to discuss and then,
Can I go back just a little bit?
We can.
I'm looking for the page, but I recall kind of the sequence of events that included, at least what they have here, a full day of activity.
yeah, I have that on my list of things to discuss, but you're right, we probably should
Okay,
do
so
that
I
now.
think
What page was that, Tim? Do you,
I might find the page.
oh, here it is, 27. Do we want to do some of these other events?
I would say not in this round.
Okay. I'm not sure there's going to be another round. And there might be, there might not be.
I would suggest that there should be another round, and that this would not be a part of this round.
So who would be in the second round? How many?
I think
Candidates.
Randy explained to us in previous discussions that the finalists would produce those who we would interview, and then from that, we would have a primary and secondary choice that then we would continue to pursue, and that would be an individual or 2 individuals that we might make site visits and/or host them and their spouses into the community prior to entering into negotiations.
Yeah, we haven't, you're right, he did put that out there as a possibility, but we have not decided to do that, so we need to figure out what we're doing, I guess.
That's where I'm drawing my,
All I'm saying is at this point, I don't think we can assume there's gonna be a second round. I mean, after we have dinner with them and question them for 3 hours, I'm not sure what more we're going to determine, but I'm not sure if we can decide that until after we've gone through the 4 interviews. So I'm just saying, if you want them to have meet and greets with either the staff or the public, then maybe we should do that at the first round rather than the second. But what do the rest of you all think?
I'm more in tune, I think, with what you're talking about. I see it as very possible that we'll do this in a one-round situation. Certainly for candidates that are coming from outside the system, I think opportunities to meet with other community leaders, see our school system, see our schools. I think much of that is important to do. And I don't know that it's important that each of us be involved each day, but I think it might be a workable situation that one or two of us take a day or a situation and make it work. I think some of these things are pretty important to do.
Aaron?
To tell you the truth, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the dinner. It is an informal setting in addition to the formal interview. I didn't hear that as part of Randy's explanation of the interview process, and until this evening, I really hadn't heard that would be part of our interview process.
He's got dinner right here on page 27.
Right, which
Yeah.
was given to me this evening.
Right.
And so,
I'm sorry, I thought we had talked about that, but that might just mean Joyce and I have talked about it, I don't know.
I don't think so.
So I apologize if I
That's okay.
hadn't mentioned that. We don't have to do a dinner, it's the board's pleasure. Whatever y'all want to do.
I was just, if we're having this discussion, toward a decision, my leaning would be to a formal interview process and that complete that round, and then the less formal and very necessary and important part of bringing them to the community and other introductions.
I can see the advantage for the outside candidates having the opportunity to sit down and, like I said, what Randy said, break bread and maybe get that comfort level and, and not be quite as anxious. So, I see a benefit from, for those outside candidates more than anybody else.
Well, and all of this, as Randy said, what we do for one, we have to do for the other. So if Don and Paul want to spend the night in the hotel the night before, I guess they can do it. My opinion is we don't plan on having a second round, and we do all this on the day, but I'm willing to be outvoted on that. I just think it'd be nice to ease into the interview by having a less formal setting of a dinner prior to that.
I concur.
Tim?
And I tend to think that there's much to be gained from seeing how people work in those settings
Right.
as opposed to just at a formal interview.
Well, because a lot of being director of schools is, done in that sort of informal setting. So it's not just social time, it's us taking a look at
How
their
they
people
operate.
skills, yeah.
I think so.
Are we looking at this timetable?
Pardon,
Are
Don?
we looking at this timetable?
No. Well, at least that wasn't what Joyce and I had talked about, but the board ultimately will decide. We can start whenever you want. We just thought, and I hadn't seen this sheet until tonight either, but we were suggesting a 5 p.m. dinner and a 6 p.m. interview. But that's not decided yet, so that's one thing we have to settle. And then, if that's how you want to do it, then I guess the first question is, do you want to plan on having a second round of interviews? I'm not willing to say that we need to do that. Now, we might. But I don't think we'll know until we've interviewed all four. And if at that point we say, well, we don't really need another round, then we will have missed the opportunity to do the community stuff and the informal dinner. So I say,
And
Do
yet
it.
not miss the opportunity, because we can intentionally do that. We may have a strong leaning as to who that candidate would be, but then we would introduce to the community, for that type of feedback, a primary candidate, as opposed to potentially going into our schools and taking central office staff up to 4 times or more, depending on how many candidates we come up with, out of their normal routine. If we choose to interview 6 or 7, then would we take 6 or 7? Because we still haven't come to a decision as to how many we would interview.
we just adopted a list of 4.
You're right, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And I really think that we'll be able to come to consensus on one in this first interview process.
You know, I do too. I don't want to short circuit anything. I don't want anybody to feel rushed. But on the other hand, we're all adults here. I think most of us have been involved in hiring decisions. There's so much you're going to learn through an interview process, and then you're not going to learn anything else until they get on the job. I need a motion from somebody about how, or some sense of what the board wants. Do you want to have a dinner with these candidates on the first round or not?
I'll move that we have dinner at 5 and an interview at 6
Okay.
for all 4 candidates.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
And I would like to
Motion's
reiterate,
adopted.
again, I believe that would, especially for the outside candidates, that would give them an opportunity to kind of relax and get to see the 7 of us and,
Right.
At least maybe put, without looking at the name
Yeah.
placard, at least have a clue.
Right, I mean, we want to make this as pleasant on these folks as possible because we're selling the system to them, just like
Right.
they're selling themselves to us. Donald?
Well, we voted to have dinner and did an interview, but the other activities suggested that day can still continue. I think you're exposing that candidate to the system, even though we have 2 that's been exposed to the system and the system exposed to them, but they have not been exposed to the system as candidates for
Right.
this position. So therefore, I think the day activities have some benefit.
Oh, I think so too.
And I think this is a process that, out of that 4, there is an excellent chance that we're, by our vote earlier to look at these, we would assume that the next director of schools would come from that recommendation. So we're in effect introducing the candidate to the system and the system to the next director of schools. So I think the importance of that day is magnified in my mind.
So do you all want to hash out what the day looks like tonight? We either need, we don't really have much choice. We need to decide that fairly quickly.
Are we creating an awkward situation for any of the candidates as a potential candidate for director of schools being introduced, to the central office staff or to other staff people? Because 3 of them would not be the director of schools eventually.
Well, they'll ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, how is that awkward? I mean, they
2 of
applied.
them are from here.
Well,
So,
they would ride off in the sunset as candidates for that position. I don't, from a personal standpoint, I don't see that as a disadvantage. I see that meeting as, we're exposing everyone to the same criteria. And I see that, a person that is applying for this position is going to have to be, they're going to be in, I hate to use the word awkward situations, but they will be in various stages of their job performance. And how they handle that will prepare them possibly down the road if they're not accepted as the director. So I don't, Aaron, I don't see that as a real disadvantage. I don't know that it does. Everything that we do is going to have pluses and minuses to it. And we've got to decide, does this have more pluses than it does minuses? And in my view, it has more pluses than it does minuses.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at, the whirlwind tour of schools, you're not disrupting the school day, you're actually doing a drive-by. So, all of these opportunities probably are fairly easy to put together. All 7 of us may not be available for every event, but maybe we could split it up.
And we're not gonna do a whirlwind tour in an hour unless we
Right.
rent a helicopter. But I think it's not a bad idea to let them see some of what our facilities look like. I mean, to me, that's a selling point.
That's C-42.
Yeah.
What was that?
I said, they don't have C-40.
No, that's right, just see a sampling of them, yeah. So which of these elements do you want to keep? Some sort of tour of schools or selected school? What else? Principals and central office staff? Yes, no?
You may do something like that as far as the luncheon deal.
Yeah, I think asking community leaders to come to 4 lunches seems unlikely to me, that they're gonna be able to do that. Maybe, so Terry, you're saying maybe you make that,
Yeah, make the staff and all that into a luncheon.
that's not a
deal.
bad
That's a
idea.
great idea.
I'm sorry.
Do the lunch with the staff, the
Oh,
principals
okay.
and the staff. And then we need some opportunity for the teachers to meet them later in the afternoon. And a little bit of downtime before dinner. I mean, that's a pretty full day. If they have a tour of the schools in the morning, a lunch, some sort of open forum at, I don't know, 3:30 or 4, in order to give teachers time to get there, an hour off.
One time out in the afternoon, a group of, Mr. Gill had a group of parents, his parent advisory group.
Mhm.
If it would not be appropriate to have some time set aside, we talk about different groups, but that group, I thought would be a good group to meet with.
Or just somehow let any member, I don't know if we want to do that, but just let the public have some sort of public reception.
Now, we did say we're eating at 5, correct?
Right, that's why the time gets a little bit short there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, something like that, you'd have to put a time limit.
Yeah,
If we did it at all.
Are you all comfortable with Joyce and I hashing out a schedule and sending it to you for approval, or do you want us to hash it out right now? We can do it either way.
I think that's an excellent idea.
If we can agree on what elements we want to include, then Joyce and I will work on the actual times. So if I'm hearing you right, you like the tour of some schools, and you like the idea of a lunch with principals. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but the principals and central office staff.
Are we talking about department heads or the entire?
I don't know.
How many bodies do we have?
Yeah, if
We
we
have
can,
over 100.
yeah, we can't do that.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to have some criteria if there.
Yeah. At some limited subgroup of that Joyce will figure out.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a good point, Wayne. I think department heads probably. And then the other folks could come to one of the open sessions.
Sure.
Are we gonna do the coffee with principals
Well, we're having principals and the department heads at the lunch.
at the lunch?
Yeah.
And so we won't do the coffee.
Right. And then, if I'm hearing you right again, another meeting or open forum for teachers and other staff? And do you want that separate from just members of the public? We could have a separate one for parents and others, or how do you all want to do that?
The majority of our certified employees, they won't be off campus till after 3.
That would have to be the yeah,
And,
that's,
and how do you get that in the 5 o'clock meal
Right.
put together?
yeah, I don't know. I don't think we do.
Mark, I'd be glad to, if the board felt it was okay, something after the interview. We can extend it on beyond.
Yeah, the problem is if it lasts 2 or 3 hours, you're talking about 8 or 9 on a school night. I'm not
That's a
sure.
lot better time for some board members than the middle of the day.
But at this point, we're talking about, are you talking about a school board, the board members interacting with them after the interview, or?
No, I'm talking about as the board hosts this day of events, board members will come and go, be a part of some events, not every event.
I just don't see us getting much participation at 8 or 9 at night. Now, I could be wrong. What part of it were you thinking we would have after the interview?
The general public. If the general public came to observe the interview, then there would be an opportunity afterwards.
I don't think we'll get anybody, but
Don't either.
I could be wrong. I don't mind doing that. We don't want to turn this into too much of an ordeal for the candidate. If they start at 8 or 9 in the morning, we're taking them to 8 or 9 at night.
And that could possibly come naturally if there are people that come to watch the interview, and then maybe some sidebars, after the interview if they
Or we could move the dinner back, but again, that's just that means the interview starts at 7 rather than 6.
Yeah.
What's your pleasure?
It's a whole lot to pack into a day. I
It
think
is.
we're seeing that maybe a second round might be appropriate.
I thought we settled that.
We did.
Okay. I appreciate a man who refuses to give up, even after the vote.
We could reconsider.
We could.
But, do we really need to have, after the luncheon, do we really need to have anything between that and the dinner?
I just thought it would be nice to give teachers and members of the public some opportunity. Now, again, the record of them coming to the event that we had a couple of months ago, very few showed up. So, you raise a good point.
Well, let's just say 4 o'clock, and, between the lunch,
Between
we'll
4 and 5, whoever
Yes.
wants to come can come.
come, and then at 5 o'clock,
think that's
we break for
reasonable.
dinner.
Okay.
So I'd say 4 o'clock.
we're not gonna arrive at a perfect schedule, I don't think.
I'll go back to, you and Joyce will hammer this thing out as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned.
Yeah.
Then that's sort of what, in broad strokes, Joyce, will figure out.
Okay.
In the morning, but then we'll have to also decide, those of us who have day jobs, it's gonna be we're not all gonna be there at all times.
Right.
So
We'll just decide.
we'll work on that somehow.
I guess we'll all take vacation weeks. No.
The silence was deafening to that response of yours, Wayne.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody okay with that? I'll take that as a yes. Now,
And we have a motion on the floor
what was the motion?
to start by Mr. Blair and Mr. Hodge to have dinner at 5 and interview will start at 6.
Okay. And could we add doing the rest of this along the lines of what we discussed?
Yes.
Details to be hashed out later. So basically, we're voting on a single day, long day with each of these 4 candidates, leaving ourselves the opportunity to call them back for a second round if we want to, but also doing it in such a way that we don't have to do that if we don't want to. Everybody will have had the full experience.
And you and Ms. Joyce working the schedule out for the activities of the day.
Yes, sir. And we'll do that in the next day or
Yes,
two and just
right.
shoot that out to you as soon as we can.
With
And
the
that-
realization that this actually is not an issue that has been decided, and I can continue to request this point.
Which point is that?
That we not pass this motion.
Well, we're about to vote on it, so
I
it will
understand,
pass or it
and
won't
so this
pass.
is the discussion.
Yeah,
Okay. Would we then logically, once determining a candidate, then take them around from school to school and from place to place and to community leaders and introduce them as the director of schools? And in this hurried attempt in this day that we see all of the challenges of scheduling, are we undermining what could be a truly honorable introduction and really doing this right one time as opposed to doing it somewhat 4 times? Introduction to the system, to outside candidates notwithstanding, they need to be able to have the freedom to go around to the schools, see the schools, all of those kind of things. But what we're attempting to do here with introductions and interaction and all of that kind of thing seems to me, again, to be the appropriate measure of a second round. It's just my comments.
okay. Further comments? You ready to vote on the motion? Which is to do a 1-day interview for each of the 4 candidates. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Motion is adopted. Okay, anything else on the logistics of the interview day?
Do we want to, these out-of-town candidates do the hotel deal the night before?
I think we do, yeah. And certainly the night before, and one's coming from Knoxville, and where's the other one? And maybe the night after, I don't know. We'll just have Joyce ask what they think they might want to do. I mean, I think we need to offer them that courtesy.
Sure.
Yeah. Other logistical questions? Okay. So now I think we're ready to talk about interview questions. We've had several weeks to look at the suggested questions from TSBA.
You know, some of these will certainly demand a lengthy opinion or explanation by the applicant, but some of them won't be that lengthy. So, you know, I'm not sure that, I think different candidates will have different points that they want to draw out
Right.
to us. And I'm not sure that we'll be counting on 3 hours.
You know, obviously, he knows a lot more about it than I do, but I thought 3 hours seemed like a long time
Yeah.
to answer these questions.
Yeah.
But, so I agree with you, Wayne. So basically, we have to decide which, if any, of these prepared questions we want to keep, and then are there questions that we want to add? And that we really do need to do tonight, so, what I thought we could do, we'll do it however you want, but if we just take this packet and go through, see which of the questions we want to ask and which we don't.
Has Mr. Reed had an opportunity to look at these?
I've not looked at this yet.
Okay.
Jeff, you chime in at any time if you see a question that looks inappropriate here, or if that we suggest one that seems inappropriate. Does that seem like a reasonable process?
May I ask it this way? If we send out a list of questions, are we obligated to ask all those questions? I do know we're obligated if we ask one to one, we got to ask each.
That's a
but
good question. I don't know.
Are we in a position to make a deletion, even though that they may have had that presented to them?
They're gonna have to ask the same questions at the same time.
I understand that, but I'm saying if we, for example, chose to accept the list as it's presented tonight, and then at some future point, choose not to ask 3 or 4 of the questions of all candidates, and just
I think so long as you're
uniform.
in regards to the questions you want to delete, you can do that.
Okay.
I just don't know at what point we'd make that decision.
I understand.
So is that how y'all would like to do this, or do you have an alternative method? I don't know of an easy way to do it. I prefer not to be here at midnight also, but I think this might go fairly rapidly. And let's just go through, and if you see one you want to cross off, say so. How about that? Okay, so go to criterion 1. The pages don't seem to be numbered, but criterion 1. I didn't, everybody got the questions? I didn't understand the first question, frankly. How have you listened to the concerns of employees, so on and so forth? With my ears. I mean, I really don't get that one. I mean, I know the criteria is we want somebody who listens carefully, but I didn't understand that. Did y'all understand that question?
A little confusing.
I kind of like the question. I think it's open-ended and a little bit ambiguous because, you know, it says, you know, how have you listened? And it forces the candidate to say more than just my ears. I'm in tune with the community. I'm in touch with the community. I'm involved in the community. I hear things informally and formally. I see things as they develop. I don't want to give what I consider to be an answer, but, you know, I saw that question and thought it was good.
And I think it's dumb, but
Okay.
we can disagree. Yes or no on this question? I don't want to belabor this. We'll be here all night. Yes or no? Or do you don't care? Don't care is not an option. Well, I need a yes or no. If you want to keep it, raise your hand. Okay, it's gone. Number 2. Everybody okay with that? I'm going to assume you're okay unless you say something.
Are you going to go through every?
I don't know how else to do it,
Yeah,
but it's going to be pretty quick, I hope.
yeah, I think it is.
Let's go for a few pages, Tim, and if it looks unworkable, we'll figure out some other way.
Oh, okay.
Number 2? Okay, that's a yes. Next page.
I want to delete number 3. I didn't.
I thought that was pretty stupid, too.
Yeah, so,
You okay with deleting number 3 on that page? Rate yourself from 1 to 5? What about the other 2? You okay? All right, next page, criterion 3. any issues on that page? Okay, criterion 4. Just waiting to hear objections, so not hearing any, let's move on to number 5, criterion 5. Okay, number 6. Seven. Eight. Number 9. Ten. I don't want to rush you through this.
Hang on just a
Yeah,
second.
take a few minutes. I'm assuming we've all read these ahead of time, so.
Number 1,
Yeah, there's one that's repeated, isn't
yeah,
there?
number 1 on 10 and
Yeah.
number 1 on 6 are redundant. so
Right, that's right.
Can we move that one out?
Yeah,
About 2 on 5 and 2 on 7.
let me get that first one. So the, number 1 on criterion 10 is repeated, right? So let's cross that one out.
Yes.
Terry, you're saying if there's another one?
Can we leave it in 10 and take it out of 6?
Okay with me.
Okay.
Terry, what were the ones you saw?
Criteria, 5, number 2, and criteria number 7, number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Same way with 1, it looks like. Same questions, don't they?
Yeah, why don't we take 2 out of criterion 5?
May check number 1 on both of them.
Yeah, let's see, give some specific examples of things you've done.
Same
Yeah, there's a couple extra words in the first one, but otherwise they're the same,
Same
you're right.
question.
Which one was it?
1 and 5 and 7.
Yeah, the first one under criteria 5, and the first one under number 7.
So you can take out.
Yeah, which one do you want to take
1 and
out?
So just take criteria 7 out.
Okay,
You're gonna leave number 3 in on, number 5.
yeah,
So number 1 out of 7.
1 out of 7, yeah. So far let's make sure we're all on the same page. Criterion 1, we X'd out the first question. Criterion 2, we deleted number 3. Criterion 5, we deleted question number 2. Criterion 6, we deleted question number 1. Criterion 7, we deleted question number 1. And then that's it. That's what we have so far. Are there other of those questions that you want to eliminate?
criterion 6, number 1.
Yes. That was a repeated question. One page we didn't do, if you go back to the second page of the sample interview guide, the general questions, I'd like to eliminate number 1.
Number which?
1. I mean, I'll certainly welcome them, but I mean, how are they going to answer? How's your day gone so far? Oh, it's really stunk. I mean, they're not going to say that, so. I don't think they are. The rest of them I thought were good. Other comments or, so let me just count here. How many does that leave us? 1, 2, 3. Wayne, you check me as we go through.
Okay.
1, 2, 3 on that general page. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 questions is what we have. I don't know. Joyce, does that seem like a lot based on prior?
I don't think so.
Don't think so?
I think that will work.
Jeff, you think it's all right?
I think it'd go hour.
Yeah. And then if we add a few more, that'll be about the right length. I don't know if you all, I have a few jotted down. Well, first of all, is that okay? Those 25 questions, is everybody good with those?
Motion or just agree.
Let's just see if there's agreement and maybe we can forestall that.
We're gonna add some, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, those we won't write ahead of time, but we will ask them. So you're right, Donald, we do need to factor that in when we're trying to estimate. Okay. Questions that you want to add? Anybody have any? Tim, you have some?
I've got one, it's lengthy, but if I may
Please.
read my draft and y'all share criterion number, I don't know where it, I guess. The system has many upper-level staff positions, including assistant superintendents, principals. Elaborate on your plan to assess their strengths and weaknesses. Please include a timeline for those assessments and how you would deal with someone you deem ineffective in their position.
How does that work right now? I'm assuming that they're evaluated once a year, right? Senior staff right now? It's okay with me. What about it? Others? We'll just, those of you who have questions that we adopt, if you'll just give the wording to Joyce. And and when we have the actual interview, do you want to talk about criterion 1 and all that? We can just go through the questions, it seems to me.
Right.
I mean, I didn't notice any that, I mean, we can go in the order here, but I don't know.
I'd like for the criterion to be sent to the candidates.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My view is whatever we finalize this, that's what we send them.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't think it needs to be read at the time of the
Yeah.
interview.
But we'll
I
leave
think
it on here, yeah, that's
correctly
fine.
frames the questions,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So we're okay with Tim's question? Did you have others?
That's it.
Wayne? Nothing?
No,
Donald?
I'm good.
Aaron?
I think that question 1, which we eliminated correctly, does give the candidate an opportunity to kind of have opening comments or something. And I think as we really kind of outline this, I think it would be appropriate for us to insert a bullet point above here where you welcome them, explain this and that and the other, and then allow them to have opening comments, particularly if they're going to meet people throughout the day. Every candidate will probably want to make some nod in that direction.
That's not a bad idea. We need to put a time limit on it.
But
seems to me.
if we list it there as opening comment, it's 2 minutes or something like that, then each candidate would be prepared.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. What about others?
I
You okay with
also
that?
wanted to cover the issue of redistricting, as rezoning. Rezoning,
Yeah.
will be an issue for our school system. What is their experience with or perspective on rezoning?
Well,
for
now, one of
schools?
these, if you look on criterion 4, question 3, remember we asked Randy to come up with some question about that, and that's what they came up with. But we can certainly reword that, or if you want to add another one, we can add another one.
It specifically talks about rezoning.
Yeah.
That's the reason I think follow-up questions are
Oh, yeah, yeah.
time allotted for those.
Right, no, that's a good point. We need to make sure when we're guesstimating how long this is gonna take, that part we can't really estimate, because it'll depend on what they say. Aaron, does that question get at what you were, or do you need a minute to look at it?
It doesn't specifically ask for what experience they've had, but I'm comfortable with a follow-up question.
Okay. Did you have other questions, Aaron?
Criteria 7, a number of the candidates in their resumes talked about grants that they had been a part of securing, and I thought that criteria 7, an educator with a record of significant accomplishments, was an opportunity to ask about an example of grant funding or grant solicitation or participation in those non-standard funding opportunities was a possibility there.
Okay.
Would you like just to ask the question, have you had any background
Yeah,
with writing grants? and
Discuss any
procuring
experience you've
grants?
had with grants.
Success you've had there in participating, leading, or directing? Yep. Okay.
Everybody okay with that one? Okay. Joyce, you got that right? We're gonna add that one to number 7, criterion 7.
I did not find a criteria where asking about the legislative environment and atmosphere that is currently in place in Tennessee with so many education-related bills being considered and debated. I don't know where that fits in which criteria, but I think it's a topic for question.
Okay, what do you want to ask? I'm not worried about where we put it
Okay.
so much. What question do you want to ask him?
Well, at this point, they are all Tennessee candidates, so their perspective on the current legislative environment for education.
Okay. That's nice and succinct.
I don't know if that's gonna do a lot. I mean, I don't see the developments. Unless they take some kind of hard stand, how they're gonna accomplish that. I think you just taking too much time on that. But that's
Yeah,
fine.
okay. What do the rest of you think about that question?
Are you kind of going towards a relationship building with the local legislators, or you want them to have an opinion on what legislation is being proposed out there?
It doesn't appear that the question would be relative to something that this candidate could be.
Well, I mean, I was asking Aaron. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was asking Aaron what his direction.
Right now, the Director of Schools for Rutherford County is consulted on at least our legislative delegation's perspective on how they're gonna vote. They value his opinion greatly and check on it before they make a decision. I imagine others through the state might lean on him as well. I would like for the Director of Rutherford County Schools to continue to have that kind of influence and, significant place.
I printed off, I think, about 10 pages back and forth of all the legislation that's in committee right now. So you're not wanting a particular answer on particular legislation. You just want to, do you want to know how he's or she has responded in the past with local legislators?
And what interest they have. If they feel that it's a lost cause and not worth their time, effort, or energy, I think that would be relevant for us to know. If they feel that their opinion and taking interest and having some say as to what those committee decisions are and the legislative decisions, I would like to know that. I'm sure there are some in education who say it just doesn't matter what we think, the legislature's going to do whatever they want to do. And then there are others who say it's very important that I weigh in, they're listening.
Okay, yes or no on this question? Who wants to ask it?
I'm just
Raise your-
trying to figure out how we would frame something like that because there's
Well,
so
here-
much legislation.
Yeah,
out there.
well, and that's why you had a pretty general
Yeah.
question. They could take it however they wanted to.
Okay.
I concur that I don't think we're going to, I don't think we'll get a lot of specific responses in terms of individual pieces of legislation. But who knows? I mean, I'm okay asking it personally, but I don't feel strongly.
I am as well.
Joyce, did you jot it down when he said it, or,
I think I did.
okay,
Maybe he'll write it out.
okay. Are we okay with that?
So what will the question be, Aaron?
Well, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Could you rephrase it, Aaron, or Joy? I'm not sure who has it.
What is the candidate's perspective on the current legislative environment for the
In
state of
Tennessee.
Tennessee in regards to education?
They could take that a million different ways. So, other questions, Aaron? Grant? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Terry?
I'm good.
I had three. First was, how do you think this board should evaluate the director? I'd like to hear what they have to say about that. Or is that just opening a can of worms?
I mean, that's not really, I mean, we're
not their
gonna,
decision.
we're gonna decide that.
But I'd like to hear what they have to say. I won't be offended if you don't like it. I have no pride of ownership in these questions.
You won't be here to do it anyway.
I'm gonna try to make it as elaborate as possible.
I think that's what we've been discussing the last two and a half hours.
Right. Are y'all okay with that one?
Yes.
Well, let's hear the other two before we decide that.
What, you got me in a quota? One was, describe your ideal board-director relationship. I was trying to think of things that we spend a lot of time on and that are important to the way that we function. And to me, I didn't see a question that really got at that. Now, again, it's sort of a vague, they could take it. So I'm not convinced it's all that great. Again, my feelings won't be hurt. But if you think about what we do on a day-to-day basis with the director, I mean, the relationship that we have with that person is pretty darn important, I think.
What's your third one?
Trying to find one that you like. The third one is, how would you deal with a principal or other employee found to have violated board policy?
I like all three of those.
Wayne doesn't like any of them. but
No, I
that's
didn't say
okay.
that. No, I didn't mean to insinuate that too. Please accept my apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But as far as the board, I was just
Is there
trying
one that
to
I've
review
missed?
those, you know,
I might have missed it. Which,
explain what you have done or would do to build and maintain a good relationship with your board. Does that take care of number
it
one?
might. What pages, or what criteria is
That's
that?
criteria 6. I like 2 and 3.
So that would take out, describe your ideal board-director relationship. Yeah, I can live with that. The other two you're okay with?
Yes, sir.
So we've added a total of 1 from Tim, 2 from me. Aaron, how many from Aaron? 3. Is that right? So that's, we added 6,
Can we,
which gives us 31 questions.
can we plan on a late night snack since,
Well, now I'm starting to wonder if 31 questions seems like a lot.
Well, that's kind of maybe why I asked the question
Yeah.
originally. We still have time, if we send these questions out, we would still have the prerogative at some point in time to make a decision that we wouldn't have to ask all 31.
Well, yeah, that's, he's saying we could go ahead and send them these as possible questions and decide to delete some later. I'm just not, we would have to do that at a meeting between now and April 9th. Or we could decide that night, I suppose, is what you're saying, right?
Is there a reason that it can't be done as simply as an agenda item on a regular session of the
Oh, we
board?
could do that.
Are there questions that you would choose to delete? Just ask it that way, pure and simple. And if that's the case, bring it to the board, we can discuss it, make those deletions at that particular point in time.
and then they'd be notified?
They've been notified, or I'm not sure we even have to notify them, but we certainly could.
We basically have wound up with about the number of questions that TSBA gave us. I mean, if you add back the ones that, the number that we put in, it about equals the number that
To
we
me, it would
deleted.
just give us time to look at them even more closely
Okay.
and recognize that we feel like 31's too many. If it does, we can.
That'd be fine with me.
It's still got time for review.
I like a time limit, kind of on the questions, answers.
On the answers? Yeah, I mean, if we start to get, and I'll just have to cut them off if they start giving us dissertations on every one of these. I mean, I can't imagine,
3 minutes ago.
yeah. Well, if we follow that, that would be 90 minutes, then we'll add another hour for follow-up discussion. Some people are already bored.
Might not take it, of course it could, so.
Move we adopt these 31 questions as possible, and if we see a need to make deletions further, we can.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion on that. Thank you for bringing clarity to that discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. So we got our questions, we got our candidates, we've got our days lined up more or less. Joyce and I will hash out the details. Unless I'm missing something, that leaves the contract. General discussion about the contract. And Mr. Reed is here. Do you have any general comments you want to make, Jeff? I didn't think to bring my copy.
I'm happy to approach this however you want to and go through some of the major points of the contract and can think about those. I don't know it's important that you have the actual contract in
Okay.
front of you because you kind of know.
Once you
some
do
of these
that, just hit,
broad issues.
yeah, hit the high points.
The first thing you have to think about with respect to the contract is what kind of term of a contract we're going to be entering into. With Mr. Gill, the first time we did a contract with him was a 2-year contract. So that is historically kind of what we've done with Director of Schools, the last few ones we've had. There's no magic number to that. You could go, 1 to 3 years, whatever you want to do on that. 2 years is what we generally have done. So we need to think about what kind of term you want to do with respect to the contract. A lot of the language in the contract is just boilerplate that recites kind of what the Tennessee Code Annotated provides with respect to the duties of the Director of Schools. So that kind of stuff really won't be changing regardless of what we do in the contract. Salary is an issue the board will have to think about and decide what it wants to do in that regard. And that could be impacted by what candidate the board selects. So I don't know if you can get into that beforehand, but you may want to wait and consider that after you select your candidate. Because obviously I think the consensus is kind of Rutherford County pays lower than a lot of other school districts in the state. So there's been some indication that possibly the salary has been lower in this county than what it should be by some outside people has suggested. The base salary for Mr. Gill was $128,115. So his base salary was $128,000. He also received a $5,000 supplement for career ladder certifications, which he held. And that was the base salary he had under the existing contract. So that's what we have to work with to begin with. So of course the board can go lower, can go higher, whatever the board chooses to do, but I guess that gives you a beginning point to decide what you want to do.
What was his car allowance?
It was $600 a month for the car allowance. Originally it was $400, it was increased at one point to $600 per month.
Okay.
Okay. The benefits to a large extent will be controlled. Of course, he'd be a member, he or she would be a participant in the insurance program and receive vacation days they've earned so far. We had in here that the director of schools would receive one personal day per 1/2 year of employment and paid holidays as approved by board policy. They also would be a participant in the retirement program, and the board will pay the cost of their membership in some professional organizations as well. With respect to vacation and sick days, the existing contract had the director receiving 24 paid vacation days a year. And they could be accrued up to 42 days under the existing contract, with the caveat that each year there's another 24 added to that. Hence, the maximum at any one given year period would be 66 paid vacation days that a director of schools would have. The state has suggested we make some modifications to the existing language that we have in our current contract, such that the director of schools would have no more than 42 vacation days rolling over from one year to the next, with the idea that when they get their 24 days in one given year, they would have up to 66 vacation days for a given year. But to the extent that those days exceed 42 at the end of that year, those days that exceed 42 will be converted to sick days, and converted to sick days at that point, and would not be allowed to accumulate. That's something the state auditors have suggested that we do. So if that's okay with the board, that was going to be a planned suggestion we make to revise the contract. So you would have 42 vacation days plus another, and that could be accrued. 24 will be added to that every year for a maximum of the 66. If they don't use those 24 during the course of the year, they can carry on only 42 into the next year. So, not sure how clear that is, but that's what the suggestion has been from the state. We have the car allowance that was $600 per month. So if the board wants to do that or look at that issue, that may be something the board wants to take up. We had the state requirements with respect to goals and objectives and evaluating the director of schools. We also had a provision that allowed the board to terminate the contract earlier prior to the expiration of the contract should the board choose to do so. Hopefully that would never be necessary, but if the board had cause to terminate the contract, there are provisions in the contract to allow that to happen for wrongful misconduct of a director of schools. There's also provisions that allow the contract to terminate in the event of the disability or death of a director. And also there's a provision in the existing contract saying if the board decided for any reason just to terminate the contract, the board could choose to do that, but would be required, if there was not good cause, to pay for the salary benefits for the remaining term of the contract in that case. And that's, in boilerplate general terms, what the contract provided. So the specific terms the board may want to consider changing, I've heard discussion about, is obviously you want to think about the term of the contract, the salary, which you may not know until you get your candidate selected what you want to do in that regard. The car allowance, I know, has been an issue with respect to some of the board members. That may be something you want to take up. And you may want to talk about vacation and sick days and how you want to handle that. But I think at a minimum, we need to change that to try to conform to some of the suggestions the state has suggested in that regard.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a very helpful overview.
Under the benefits as far as health, is there a life insurance package involved with the general health insurance medical?
No, nothing specifically in the contract. It's whatever they would have earned as an employee of the school system.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to start talking about some of these issues tonight? Jeff, walk us through, we settle on our candidate. and the negotiations start, how does that process go?
Well, I think the board would, of course, wants to make the first offer, so the board would need to set the proposed salary and propose a salary to the director, to the candidate at that point, see if that's acceptable to the candidate or not. If it's not acceptable, that number will be brought back to the board for consideration for revision or review, and just see where you are on the numbers.
So all that takes place during official board meetings?
It would, it
Okay.
would.
So at this point, if everything was combined into one gross, if we move the vehicle allowance into the gross and the other items, what is it, 141, with everything that's presently by Mr. Gill at this point?
You're close, so that's close to it.
Okay. So will we be do we need to set that parameter tonight, or is that something that would be done after the offer is made?
You can make it tonight if you want to. I would suggest you probably wait and see who your candidate is first, and then make it. If the board was inclined to go ahead and set it tonight, I think it's certainly, you can propose that as a salary tonight.
Jeff, in the negotiation process, we have no obligation to begin at the contract where we've ended with Mr. Gill, correct?
You have none whatsoever.
Okay. In a negotiating process, if we anticipate that we're going to end in a dollar amount similar to where we are with Mr. Gill, would we be well advised to begin below that?
I would always advise people to start off lower than your number you're willing to go to pay.
Okay.
So, yes.
So,
Of course, we've just revealed our strategy.
Right, right.
all right,
There's two
fine.
candidates.
Yeah, we don't
We're
have
firm on our first number, folks.
we don't have a poker face anymore, do we?
All right, fine. But, in that regard, I mean, isn't tonight the discussion to set some of those things and have a baseline contract that begins the discussion and changes some language? I think, without question, the language that's been suggested by the auditors should be altered. I had a couple of other areas where I thought discussion was warranted. Do we
Whatever.
continue down that road?
We can. Again, we're not going to finalize the entire thing, obviously, because that'll be the subject of negotiation. But yeah, I mean, I'm willing to handle it however you want to. We can start talking about some of this.
But we would need a starting point that came from a motion, second, and a vote from the board, correct, Jeff?
Yes.
The question is, do you do that? I'm a little reluctant to get that detail before we have the interviews, but.
Again, I think from a position of neutrality is the right place to begin. And then if we, take a step in that direction based on who that candidate is, then all the better. But as they are examining us, and as we are examining them, we have 4 candidates now, and I haven't gone back and checked carefully, but I don't think any of them have been directors of schools prior. They certainly are not currently. And in that regard, we had an agreement with a 8-9 year experienced director of schools, and this would be a brand new director of schools. I would suggest maybe the item 5 in the contract, the annual salary shall be, original language, $90,000, should be in the neighborhood of $115,000, and then move on from there.
I think one of these candidates was in Marshall
Mm-hmm.
County.
I was thinking perhaps, but
Yeah, one of them,
not
some
currently.
years back, yeah, not
Yeah.
currently. Other discussion.
I'd like to see the car allowance taken out of the contract. I think that's an area that I just think it's not important for the success of the contract. How we compensate director in lieu of that, he can drive the county vehicle. That's what I'm thinking.
It's cleaner to have everything in one figure, if you ask me, not, I mean, right now, and it's not Mr. Gill's fault, but I mean, it's split up in 3 or 4 different figures. I sort of like the idea of combining it all, I don't know.
And I
Wayne?
agree with Don. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
Well, I just like a figure.
Mhm.
This is what we're paying. Don't have to add this and calculate
Right,
this.
I agree.
Are we obligated by law to honor the certification of this individual in an education role? Or could we classify this individual as a classified employee and take away the career step type of influence in the contract?
Well, a salary, you can actually set the salary of the director of schools. So if you set the director of schools' salary at a certain amount, that is something you can do, regardless of career level. Because this is a different contract with director of schools.
Could we tie currently their benefits are tied to a certified employee benefit package. Could we tie their benefit package to a classified employee?
If they're certified, they're going to be certified, because the director of schools will be a certified employee.
Okay.
Because they're licensed.
I'd just like to wait. I like Donald's point. I'd like to have one neat package, but I'd rather wait until after the interviews, and then at that time we'll negotiate.
Other thoughts? A couple of you are giving me poker faces. I'd rather wait. Wayne would rather wait.
I as well.
Okay, that's
But we
3.
begin at 141,000 then, our negotiations.
We haven't said that. We said we'd rather wait.
I believe everyone that has put in an application knows what the contract reads right now.
I
what
would
the number
imagine
is.
they
And
do.
I think there's an assumption that it'll be someplace in that ballpark. I mean,
I'd rather them ask for it than assume.
Well, we are pretty significantly behind what systems of similar size are paying. I think, we need to be aware of that. Doesn't mean we necessarily have to match it dollar for dollar, but that's another factor to chew on as we go through this process.
Of course, to
Grant.
offset that, with the quality of the whole situation, the whole neighborhood is certainly above most that we compare it to. And we also, cost of living here is not as high as it is some short ways down the road. So I think there's some offset there. So, I think we'd be premature just throwing up a figure.
Right.
Because I think you look at the whole package, that's why people are still coming to the neighborhood to go to school and to live here in general. So that's worth a lot to
Yeah.
folks.
Well, we've decided to put that off till after the interviews. What about these other issues? Term. Do we decide to put we sort of informally decided that. Are we all in agreement of making one figure, not separating the car allowance, career ladder?
Career ladder moves, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it?
Well, I think what Jeff said was we can ignore that if we want, just make it cleaner by putting everything in one figure.
Okay.
And I like that too, just one package.
Okay.
We voted on giving Mr. Gill
We did.
his career letter after the contract was awarded. To give him a
Right.
raise
Yeah.
from the state.
We didn't have to do that, I don't believe.
We
did we?
didn't have to
Yeah.
do that.
Okay, so that leaves us, of the items that Jeff outlined, a potential change, it leaves us term of employment, which again, that might be something that folks want to negotiate on too, but we can certainly have a general discussion. And vacation sick days, which, you know, I certainly think we should make the change that the state auditors recommend.
You know, if you allow 66 days, that's 3 months of salary plus a week, or 6 days.
It's a pretty good chunk.
So that's a pretty good chunk.
We just paid out that much, didn't we?
Yeah, we just paid.
Under this scenario, though, would that still happen, or could it still happen would it be 42 would be the maximum payout, or would it still be 66?
It could be 66 if they went the entire year, did not use any of their days, had 66 at the end of their term. So it still could be 66,
But
depending on how the timing was.
Right.
Yeah, it wouldn't go beyond.
Yeah, it wouldn't go beyond. Well, right now, we're not allowed, in their state law that governs that we're not allowed to pay more than
Yeah,
66.
there are state regs that govern that, yes.
Thoughts about those days, or about the term of contract, or about issues that are not in there? I'm sorry.
I think term of contract, 2 years is what's been indicated, is what we've done in the past. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I wouldn't want to go any longer. I really think it gives us 66 days, but I really personally think 60 days is enough. I don't, 66 is maximum, and I just, I believe we don't have to go to 66
No, we
days.
don't.
I like, a clean number is 60, 3 months. I like that.
Yeah. Wayne?
Is there a difference between, in my office, we just call it personal time off? So it's sick days or it's vacation days. Is that the same way here, or is it?
There is a personal day delineation in the contract currently. So there is,
But as far as utilization?
yeah, so vacation days are an additional personal days under the current contract. It's 1 personal day per 1/2 year of employment is what the current contract provides. So
What does that mean? I mean, that,
a personal day you could take for sick time or vacation time is a personal day. Yeah, I don't see a real need to keep it in the contract.
I mean, because
It's another day
the
off.
time is.
Because you have sick days or vacation days,
I
either
would
one,
concur.
so, yeah.
I agree.
So we'll take out personal days
I
altogether.
think I'm sensing that.
Yes.
Yeah, let's take that
We're
out.
talking about time.
Right, it's just another category of,
And brings up another category, and I'd like to see in the contract that, the board have a little more, control over the time. Or maybe not, control might be the wrong word. At least a log of time. When the director is going to, conferences, when he's taking vacation days, when he's taking a sick day, those types of things. I think there needs to be some type of log for that.
would that be a,
Accountability. We expect
Right.
everyone else, and I think as a board, we should.
and that would be reported to the chair, to the board, or there'd be some mechanism
Just
for us
some
to know? I mean, he's our,
mechanism,
or she is our employee.
I see Ms. Joyce sitting there, the director of schools could, work through her with a log and
Okay.
to the board chairman or something. Yeah. As a board member, I don't want the director calling me
Right.
and saying, hey, I'm going to a conference today or something, but I think as a collective body, we should have that information.
I could come up with some language if that's the board's desire to do that.
I think that'd be fine with me. What about we didn't settle on Donald's 60-day max. So what you're proposing, Donald, would be to reduce the total accumulation of vacation days to no more than 60, is that,
Right, that's, I'm looking at payout.
okay?
And I'm saying 60 days is that's 3 months payout. And he doesn't lose the days, they just roll over into.
Sick days.
Sick days.
What's your pleasure on that?
Would it be reasonable to also reduce the beginning number of vacation days to 20 from 24? Again, good round number.
That is a good round number, but I'm thinking in terms of, the other employees here. I'm not sure of all of their benefit package.
It's a good question.
Until I knew what their benefit.
We have our HR
package was.
director here. The central office staff, what vacation do they get?
12-month certified employees, 12-month employees earn vacation time based on their years of experience in the system. So I, for example, with 30 years, earn 2 days a month. So I earn 24 days a year. And then that is the maximum. And then
So that's
also
what that's
earn
based
So the current,
per-
yeah.
Leave that alone.
Per policy, for certified employees.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense with the 24.
All you had to do is ask, I could've told you that.
Well, I know, but I've worked a long time, but I didn't get all those benefits.
Well, it sounds like we're making some headway here.
I think so. So have we decided on 60? Is that going to be the maximum number?
I think I saw agreement on that for the payout, right? And obviously, this is not the final, what we'll do is just ask Jeff to make these changes, and then we'll look at this again when we get to the point after the interview of making an offer.
I can revise the language of the contract, send it to everyone. They can look at it. If you guys have any
Yeah.
more additional changes, we can make those.
I think that'd be excellent.
There's language in the contract right now that says the director may not create any new positions without board approval. And I saw a little ambiguity in that. I thought the director may not create or reclassify any positions without board approval.
So you want to add the reclassification?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? I don't know how often that happens.
Can't hurt to be there, I think.
Yeah.
I also thought about without specific board approval, because sometimes board approval could be surmised in the approval of an annual budget. And I think that this goes to a specific motion and decision for an individual position.
I can plug language in to that effect.
Okay.
Other discussion?
Jeff, are there any elements in the extensions that have largely changed the original contract? I know that the car allowance changed from original language 400 to 600, but were there any other provisions? I read it that the step increases were in the original language, and then they were increased in kind as other increases occurred. But, and we've already addressed that, but are there any other issues?
And other than term and salary, that's all that's really been changed
Okay.
since the original contract.
Can we go back to the reclassification, that statement? What was that again?
Well, Mr. Holiday suggested that there was a provision in the contract stating that the board director of schools did not have authority to create new positions.
Okay,
New
should that be,
positions.
should that be a contract, or that should be a board policy issue, should it? Should that actually be a contract provision?
I think it could be either. I think it's okay to have in the contract if you want to have it in the contract.
Okay. It just sounds more to me as a board situation rather than an employment contract.
You know, you get under state law, the director of schools has large, discretion with respect to employment decisions pertaining to employees. So to some extent, you probably can control that better by contract than you can by board policy. So if you're saying the intent is that you don't want the director of schools to create new positions without board approval, then I guess that's the intent of this provision, then it doesn't hurt to have it in the contract. And the reclassification is, I guess, taking one position and changing them to a different job duty. And that's what I would interpret your reclassification limitation to mean. So you're saying with respect to, you do not want the director of schools to have the authority to reclassify an employee's position without board approval?
I believe from my understanding that there are acceptable salary ranges for different strata of central office employees, and by reclassifying a position, it in effect creates a sizable pay increase.
Correct. Okay. Let me check into that. I'll talk to Mr. Sandvig if that's okay, see how that works, and we'll see what we can do to address it.
Am I not correct? We had that situation come up not that long ago here, and it was presented to us for approval.
Only in terms of the budget, not as a specific, it's my recollection.
I'm fine for putting it in, I'm just,
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's the case, then why don't we put the nepotism language and the other issues that we have under board policy? You know, I'm trying to weigh why we would put this particular issue in the contract and not have it under board policy. So I guess that's where my confusion.
Well, I think it's a valid question. I think it could be either place. I don't think it has to be in the contract, but you could have it there or in the policy. Either way.
Let me go back to salary and something Aaron said, and this might be what you asked, but I'm not clear. A few years back, we decided that whenever the employees got a cost of living adjustment, the director would get that automatically. Is that what you were asking? And if not, I want to ask that question. Was that a contractual?
Well, I understood that to be, I think that's a separate thing than what Mr. Holliday was talking about.
But I didn't understand what Aaron was saying, I don't think.
At present, I think that the benefits package for classified employees and certified employees is largely the same. That may not always be the case. And by which model would the director of schools be measured? Would he be in the track of certified employees or classified employees?
No, not that one. That was something you said about when you're talking about the extensions or the additions that we added to the contract.
The ladder thing. What's the term for it?
Career ladder.
Career ladder.
Okay.
Yeah. In the original contract, plus Harry Gill's career ladder incentive of $3,000 and no dollars for a total annual salary of $93,000. So from the very beginning, career ladder incentive was part of his contract. And then subsequently in extensions, that career ladder has been adjusted as it adjusts.
Well, then, in any event, that reminded me of this question. So right now, is that in the contract that his salary or her salary would automatically be increased when?
Yes. Well, it's not in the contract, but that's what has happened. So if we change, for example, when that 1.4% bonus was paid, that would go to director of schools as well.
Right. I mean, would that be something that should be in a contract, or should we just let future boards decide that? I just think at one point we said, as a general rule, we want to give the director the same increase that
Other certified.
it's classified, yeah.
Even beyond that, these,
Yeah, and
we had a vote one time that put, we said that we would give the director of school, if the teachers got 2%,
Right.
we would.
Well, I'm just asking if we did that in the contract, or if we just made that sort of our statement of
I think that's what you did
policy.
when you made the bonus, when you approved the bonus at that point.
Or do we need to add that or not?
I don't
add
think
that?
you have to have it in the contract. I think the board can just deal with that as it comes up, should
Okay.
the board choose to do that.
Yeah, Aaron.
The adjustment, some were, you know, that maybe there was no adjustment. In the July 2007 contract extension, to further increase the Director of Schools' annual salary by $5,000 to reflect the career ladder level bonus pay which the Director of Schools had earned before becoming Director of Schools. So we increased from $3,000 to $5,000. I don't know why we increased necessarily, but we did. And it was, you know, noted to career ladder.
I just think we just agree to do away with all that career ladder stuff and have one figure to make it more clear exactly what this person will get. Okay, other topics related to the contract? Well, we've made some good progress tonight, so appreciate everybody's work on this. I can't think of anything else we need to do tonight. Joyce, can you?
No.
That was very emphatic, so I think that means it's time to adjourn. So we're adjourned, and then we're meeting Thursday night for the budget hearing. So it was, yes,
3:30?
3:30, and the program starts 4 or so. Okay, we're adjourned.